When I was in preschool, one day we had a substitute teacher. And of course, she couldn't take the time to learn about 25 different 4-year-olds, so she just assumed we were all fairly normal kids. And she said, "Draw me a picture, everybody, and have it tell a story. Then when you're done, I will come around and I can write down the story your picture is telling." Well, when she came to me, I said, "Look, this is my mommy and my daddy and me, that's Sarah, and my dog Chris, and we're all going to dinner at Chi-Chi's." So the teacher didn't want to write all of that, so she wrote down, "My family goes to dinner." I threw a hissy fit. I said, "No, that's not what I said. I said mommy and daddy and Sarah and Chris go to dinner at Chi-Chi's." And the teacher dropped her marker, ran out of the room, and we could hear her in the hallway asking another teacher, "Why didn't anyone tell me that one of them could read?" My mom and dad used to read me stories before I would go to bed at night, and I was fascinated by the idea that these markings on the page meant a story, that someone somewhere had thought of this story, and I could find out what it was just by looking at the markings. It's hard to say what inspired me to start writing because I don't remember a time that I haven't had stories somewhere inside my head. Probably the fairy tales that I heard when I was a little girl were my first inspiration. And then as I got older, every author that I read gave me some new level of inspiration, either things that I liked and would like to do for myself or things I didn't like and would put in the column of things that I don't want to do. So really, everyone that I've ever read has been an inspiration. Fan fiction is when you take an existing world, a world of a book or a TV show or a movie that you enjoy, and you take the characters in the setting and you write your own stories about them. My particular world of fan fiction is the Harry Potter books, which of course are wildly popular and have had a lot of fan fiction written about them. Although some writers do request that you not write fan fiction based on their works, there are not many of them. Most authors take it as a compliment that someone is so inspired by their characters, their setting, that they would like to write stories of their own. I first got inspired to write fan fiction in my junior year of college, and at first I wanted to just continue the story because that was between books 5 and 6 of the Harry Potter series. So I experimented with writing a continuation story, a 6th-year story, and with writing a companion story of what had happened to Harry and his friends many years later when they were grown up and had children of their own. But then one day I was sitting around and I thought, it's really sort of unfair to start at this point in the written stories because J.K. Rowling has her own idea where these stories are going. What if I took these characters and went back to a very early point in their lives, changed something there, and took the story forward? It would be much more my story then, and that's how my biggest fan fiction adventure began. It's called The Dangerverse. It is 5 stories long and longer than the actual Harry Potter series itself. It has taken me almost 10 years to write this much, and it is what's called an AU or alternate universe story. My breakpoint, the point where things change, is after chapter 1 of the very first Harry Potter book, because I take the characters from that point and I change one thing that happens, and then I write about the events that snowballed from that. And in my case, it was, what if Harry Potter grew up with a family who loved him, who knew about magic and taught him about magic and taught him about his destiny? One of the main characters of the Dangerverse who does not appear in the canon of Harry Potter books is Remus Lupin's wife, who is also Hermione Granger's older sister, and her legal name is Gertrude, but she doesn't like it very much, and as a little girl she was sometimes crazy, so she got the nickname Danger, and it stuck with her. so well that some people don't even know her real name. I think my favorite parts of it have been constructing a family in fiction, because very often in fiction, families get pushed into this pigeonhole as they're all dysfunctional, they're all crazy, they make everyone unhappy. So I had a lot of fun writing a family that is, yes, a little dysfunctional, a little crazy, but they also love each other, support each other, help each other through hard times. I also enjoy taking things that happened in the Harry Potter books and tweaking them around different ways to account for the different characters in the Dangerverse. That's always a lot of fun. My screen name for the fanfiction websites I write on is Why Do You Need to Know? And I chose this pen name because at the time I started writing, the Pixar's The Incredibles had just come out, and I was so amused by the scene between Frozone and his wife that I just had to choose that as a pen name. Then later on down the line, some of my readers started asking what my name was, so I chose a pen name from different names of relatives of mine, and that pen name is Anne B. Walsh, and that is the name that appears on most of my writing today, both fanfiction and originals. My biggest driver towards original fiction as something more organized was once I got deeply into the Dangerverse and realized, hey, there are people who read my stories, who will want to read more of my stories even once this fanfiction thing is over. So I started experimenting with some of the worlds I'd come up with when I was young. I had a few different worlds going on, and I've continued to expand them, but I didn't really have anything very big and coherent until September of 2011. The Chronicles of Glenscar began in September of 2011 when I found out that a PBS special from one of my favorite musical groups had been released. It had been filmed 2 years earlier and then held back for internal reasons. And what it was a series of little vignette type stories all held together by a series of songs. But right in the middle of what I considered the stories, it ended. And I was very taken aback. I was thinking, but what about this love story? What about that love story? You can't just leave it there. Well, they could. I couldn't. I started thinking about how these stories might continue, and the upshot of it was that 6 months later I had a novel. I tried to do a Christmas or winter holiday themed release every year for my fans. This year's is called 12th Night, and that's night with a K. And it's a cross between the fairy tale of the 12 Dancing Princesses and the myth of Hades and Persephone. I'm also working on a project for National Novel Writing Month 2014. That's November every year. And it's another fairy tale exploration called Salt of the Earth. It's an exploration of the fairy tales where a princess is asked by her father, how much do you love me? And her answer is, I love you like I love salt in my food. And usually her father's very angry with that answer, and he doesn't understand until the very end of the story that that actually means that she loves him very, very much. Writing full-time would be a wonderful thing. It would be a dream come true. Unfortunately, writing full-time means that I have to sell enough books to pay my bills, and I'm not just supporting me, I'm supporting a pair of crazy dogs and a pair of crazy cats. So I have to make enough money to feed them and myself, and right now that isn't happening. I hope very much that it will happen at some point in the future, but until then, keeping my day job.